Thanks to our friends at the incomparable Corinthia Hotel Budapest for making this episode possible. To book your stay at this luxurious and, quite frankly, culturally and historically important hotel right in the heart of Budapest, visit Corinthia.com. Every now and then, I'm reminded just how lucky I am to live in Europe. I can jump on a flight from London just after breakfast and be strolling the boulevards and back streets of a city like Budapest by lunchtime. How wonderful is that? And how lucky we are to have a city like Budapest so close to us. For there are a few places in the world that are as unabashedly unique as Budapest. It's been 8 years since my last trip to this great and noble city, and what a fool I've been for waiting so long to return.
Once three is now one. Separated by the meandering banks of the Danube, the ancient cities of Buda and Pest, along with the oft-forgotten Óbuda, were united in 1873 to form what is now one of Europe's most beautiful capitals. And although the city is now spiritually and administratively one, you can't ignore the fact that it's cleft in twain by the river Danube, so you'll still hear people refer to places as being on the Buda side or the Pest side. But no matter what side of the river you find yourself on, you'll experience this city's quite extraordinary journey from Celtic tribal village to European 21st century cultural and historical icon.
The local aerodrome is the recently renovated and recently renamed Budapest Franz Liszt International Airport. Quite a mouthful, which is why, at least locally, it's almost universally referred to by its old name, the Ferry Hedge. It's a small but very solid airport. In fact, it's won the Skytrack's best Eastern European airport for the last 4 years in a row. While there's no direct train or metro connection, the 200E bus from the airport takes you to the Kőbánya Kispest metro terminal on Line 3. From there, you can continue on the metro into the center of Budapest in about 20 minutes. You can buy your ticket for the bus inside the airport or from the driver, but you'll need to buy your metro ticket for your onward journey at the metro station itself. You can also take the 100E bus directly from the airport to Deák tér in Budapest for 900 forint. The journey takes around 40 minutes, and you can buy your ticket from the BKK kiosks, information desks, or directly from the bus driver. Finally, you can also take a taxi from the airport into town. Be sure to use the official airport taxi rank, which is located literally right outside the doors as you leave the arrivals hall. The journey takes about 30 minutes and will cost you around 6,500 forint. When you arrive in Budapest proper, you have a comprehensive public transport system available to you. Occasionally derided by sneering Western Europeans as tired and a bit dilapidated, what they're clearly failing to see is a public transport network that is cheap, efficient, and oozing with mid-century charm. Dilapidated? How dare they? Metro consists of 4 lines that cover most parts of this city, but the lines don't converge at many points, so make sure you use apps like Google Maps to plan your route and your transfers. The Metro is cheap, clean, very easy to use, and pretty noisy. An alternative to the Metro are the city's trams, a slower but more enjoyable way of being interrupted by a tram. Tram, tram, tram. An alternative to the Metro is the tram, a slower but arguably more enjoyable way of getting around the city. And fun nerd travel fact for you, lines 4 and 6 are said to boast the longest trams in the world. But as my wife is so keen on pointing out to me, size isn't everything. There are a variety of ticketing options available to you. The 350 forint single journey ticket is good for one uninterrupted journey along the length of any metro, tram, or bus line, but does not include transfers between buses and trams. There are also packs of 10 tickets, transfer tickets, short journey metro ticket, boat ticket, bus tickets. It gets complicated quickly. My advice, get a travel card like this. They come in 24 and 72-hour passes, as well as 7, 15, and 30-day passes if you're planning on sticking around for a while. You can buy them from any of the ticket machines, most of which take debit and credit cards. While we're on the subject of tickets, one very important thing to remember, you have to validate your ticket before you get on whatever form of transport you're getting on. That means finding one of these machines, sticking your ticket in until it takes a little chunk out of it like that. If you don't do this, you can get a hefty fine from one of the plainclothes ticket inspectors that swarm almost all forms of transport. The only exception to this is the travel cards. You don't need to validate those. No matter how you choose to get around the city or across the river, I encourage you to wander on foot as much as you can. Not only is this a famously beautiful city, but the 7 main bridges that stitch the city together are works of architectural and engineering magnificence. Each as impressive up close as they are from afar, and each with their own unique role in this city's history. One final thing on transport. Uber is not available in Budapest. The car-sharing service left the city in early 2017. However, Taxify is a good alternative and avoids some of the more common taxi scams that tourists fall victim to. One of the things that makes Budapest unique is also a little bit of a geological anomaly. Because of the city's unique geography, thermal waters run unusually close to the surface. And when the Ottoman Turks occupied this part of Hungary, they brought with them their proclivity for thermal bathing. So as a result, all over the city you have these beautiful public and private thermal baths which people flock to in their thousands, often on doctors' orders because the minerals in the water are supposed to cure a variety of ailments. But whether you're feeling unwell or feeling great, you've got to come to one of these because they really are unique to Budapest. We tend to have a fixed impression of what Hungarian food is. Goulash, paprikash, the dishes that have escaped the country's gravitational pull and are now, for better or worse, Hungary's culinary ambassadors to the world. But the food here is much deeper, much richer than its 2 famous exports. Local food expert Gábor Banfalvi introduced us to a few more Hungarian classics.
So I would say let's get a plain, maybe a classic.
Okay.
Langos gets its name from lang, the Hungarian word for flame, which was the original method for cooking these doughy, chewy street treats before deep frying took it to a whole new level.
Yummy.
At home, you would just rub garlic on it. At these buffets, they usually have garlic sitting either in oil or I think just water or maybe vinegar, and then they brush it with a brush. It's a real summer food. It goes really well with beer and with spritzer, fröccs, which is both of these drinks are really popular here.
It feels like comfort food.
Yeah.
You know, anything fried and doughy is going to be...
When I was a kid, yeah, I would just
pick it up and eat it.
stuff it in my face.
It's definitely face stuffing.
Yeah, and then you have the sour cream all over.
Cream smile.
Yeah. Another food experience guaranteed to make you smile is a literal sausage fest. In Budapest, yeah, there are a bunch of like independent butcher shops that would sell fresh meat. And on the side, they usually have a little cabinet, or whatever you call it, with sausages and grilled stuff, which would be pretty much this. A couple of kinds of sausage, some kind of grilled meat, and these guys turned around the idea. They started out as a butcher shop. They had a huge selection of freshly, grilled meats and sausages, and they became really successful. And they practically got rid of the fresh meat part. They expanded their food selection and pretty much came up with a traditional Hungarian fast food restaurant. And it's not just fast either. This food is cheap. Our meal of meats galore, goulash, potatoes, and cabbage with drinks cost just 4,300 forint, or around 12 pounds. And with that extra forint or two burning a hole in your pocket, might I be so bold as to recommend a couple of sweets? How about Rites, an heirloom from Budapest's Ottoman heritage? A Hungarian strudel, if you will. I know I will.
The powdered sugar makes it.
Mm-hmm.
Or perhaps a Hungarian dessert institution, chimney bread. Dough, rolled in sugar and roasted over a bed of charcoal. What is not to like about any of that? Budapest has managed to create joy in every nook and cranny of this city. Like the ruins bars, reclaimed abandoned industrial buildings from the Soviet era transformed into bars.
It started out in the early 2000s, late 1990s. It started out as a very local thing for local university students, as cheap and hip bars. But today we have a bunch of them all over this area, and it's actually become like a signature to Budapest tourism.
In case you lean refined over ruin, one of the country's best kept secrets is its outstanding wine. Near perfect growing conditions in various parts of the country have propelled Hungarian wine to the international stage. Oh, and our friend Gabor also happens to be a WSET certified wine expert, so we were in very good hands.
Let me just tell you that Hungarians are very open-minded when it comes to drinking. We drink beer, spirits, and wine, equally passionately.
And that passion is evident in their creations, some of the best wine I've ever tasted.
Hello, my name is Tibor Mescal. I am the Senior Duty Manager of this beautiful Corinthia Grand Hotel Budapest.
During our stay in Budapest, we happened to meet Tibor, a man who may or may not have been the inspiration for Ralph Fiennes' character in Wes Anderson's Grand Budapest Hotel. And no one knows Budapest quite like Tibor, it seems.
I must say it was still very elegantly adventurous, and we always could find a small door behind the big one.
I have to admit, I had no intention of interviewing Tibor for this episode, but the more we talked to him, the more captivated we were by his stories of bygone Budapest. A master storyteller, we just had to share some of his gems about this city's 20th century heyday.
You had to go around with certain subjects to be acceptable by the regime, and you make it sure the visitors and the guests coming from the Western states and Western countries feeling just as comfortable if they go into any other country. Once they stepped into this Grand Hotel, were no much different to any other hotels, let's say in Vienna, Paris, or even in New York. Inside, the staff and the colleagues of mine and everybody wearing immaculate uniforms, but we still feel a little bit timid about we've been watched every step what we done all around, so we had to handle everything with utmost care. The tourism in general, lots of people come to the country at the time as well. And I must say the guests and also the entire society were a lot more formal than today. You see gentlemen on the street traveling on trams or underground metros or buses or anything like that. They still wear everyday suits, wintertime coats and hats, you see. And the elegance was very uniformized. So our guests at the time were very nicely dressed, exceptionally good looking ones. When a lady arrived from London after a couple of hours flight and stepped into the lobby foyer and approached the concierge or a check-in reception, well, you couldn't believe it. They all looked immaculately clean, fresh perfume come through, a fragrance lingering around in the lobby. They had matching suitcases and beauty cases, these old-fashioned little boxes like. The atmosphere was like just today you see it only in the movies.
And Tibor ought to know a thing or two about movies. Just like Monsieur Gustav of the Grand Budapest, Tibor has welcomed some of the biggest stars of their day.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
But perhaps the biggest character the hotel and indeed the city has hosted is Tibor himself. While it is part of the European Union, Hungary still uses its own currency, the forint. ATMs are everywhere, and your credit and debit card for the most part will be accepted at all but the smallest street food stalls and shops. Budapest is generally a very safe city, especially for tourists. Minor annoyances like the occasional opportunistic pickpocket and taxi scams are about as much as you're going to have to contend with. But the recent surge in stag and hen do's has attracted, as it has in many other cities, an undercurrent of quasi-organized crime looking to exploit the enthusiastically inebriated Johnny bridegroom. So, if you are here for a prenuptial piss-up, be cool, watch your back, make good choices, and you'll be fine. Budapest is one of those rare gems of a city that is very cosmopolitan, but still very good value. Things are not that expensive here, be it food, drink, transportation, or anything in between. You can eat and drink very well here. You can get around cheaply. You won't get ripped off even in the most touristy areas. And on that note, let's do the rundown. A cup of coffee will cost you around 750 forint. Find a beautiful Budapest beer will cost you around 500 forint.
And because you all love them so much, you'll pay around 800 forint for a Big Mac.
Finally, to our old foe, tipping. Tipping is actually a thing here, and in many restaurants you'll see a service charge displayed on the menu, around 10% usually. If it's not displayed on the menu, they actually have no right to charge you service. But if it's not included, many Hungarians will still tip, around 10% for a reasonably good meal. But in an awkward departure from standard procedure, instead of leaving the tip on the table, you actually tell your waiter how much you want to tip at the end of the meal, so have fun with that.
Budapest is one of those cities that seems to have moved at a different pace to the rest of the world. Not slower, not faster, just different. Playing an important role in almost every chapter in European history, the city has evolved and adapted in its own particular way, shrugging off war, an ever-changing political landscape, and the tumultuous creation of what we now know as modern Europe with admirable affability and, dare I say it, eccentricity, marching to the beat of its own drum, I believe it's known as. I like that. I like Budapest, and I'm very sure you will too.